name is Jeremy Morgan. I am the BU Cybersecurity Manager for Hitachi Energy. What does it really mean? It means I am responsible for everything product facing from a cybersecurity perspective. So if it's a product, a project, or a service we deliver, if something goes wrong from a cybersecurity perspective, I am the one the BU Managing Director calls up and starts chewing out first. So I really try to avoid those conversations. Today we're going to talk about simple malware scanning. We're not talking about EDX or threat detection or any of those fun fancy words that everyone throws around. It's not the sexiest technology in the world, but at the end of the day, it's still one of the most important preventative or detective controls, depending on where you're using it. Hopefully it's preventative controls in the chain, right? As a recovering CISA, preventing the malware before it starts running through the network is a whole lot better than detecting it, as it takes down and locks up each and every one of your devices in your control system. And I do this from a position of my company produces, the backbone of the electric grid. So I worry about this a lot. So, next slide. I've got the clicker. I was not trained. I thought people were I thought the guy back there was knew the slides really well. Yeah, I know. All right, so I work in the business unit called Grid Integration. Hitachi Energy is divided into 4. I work for this one. We have 6,000 employees across 90 plus countries, right? We are where electricity is, right? So 4,000 projects delivered in the last 15 years. One of the biggest things is 200 gigawatts of installed systems just for high voltage DC. 200 gigawatts is about the equivalent of 200 nuclear units, right? So a modern nuclear unit produces about a gigawatt of power, right? So in some of our cases, like in Southern LA, we are responsible for about 8 gigawatts of power being imported into Southern California. You can imagine if one of those systems goes down, it is not a pretty day, right? And if both of them were to go down because of a virus that I should have known about, it would be a really bad day. So what's my problem? Number one is scale. I have hundreds of products across 5 global product groups with R&D members all over the world. I just literally came back from China on Sunday night, right? Or from India on Sunday night. One of my biggest R&D centers. We have thousands of customers, all with opinion and regulatory requirements, right? Some of our customers, they really like certain vendors. Some of my customers really like other vendors. Some of my customers are regulatorily prevented from using certain vendors. So it makes things very, very complex. I can't choose just one. So I have internal 6,000 employees delivering products and services in 90 countries. Every service engineer that goes out and touches a plant is a potential risk for me, right? Every time they go out and they touch a system and they're transferring files, how do we, right? Like SneakerNet, right? Most of our control systems in the world, especially the systems I work on, are air gapped, right? And so every single one of those service engineers is a potential risk for me, and I have to make sure that they are not walking in with some malware. Lastly, I kind of have to do, so in the ICS space, it's not uncommon for Windows or Linux-based devices to not support active malware, and often updating methods used by OEM service personnel often bypass whitelisting, right? So we talk about other technologies in control system like whitelisting and stuff like that it's actually on the control system, but often when I go in and my service engineers do stuff, they're turning off whitelisting, putting in an update mode, and then they're applying the stuff. So whitelisting is just gonna whitelist that malware, right, when they turn it back on. So a lot of the other controls that you think you're relying on, you're not really relying on when an OEM shows up. We disable everything because you can't leave that stuff on and have us do our job. So it's not impossible for a known virus, if caught before it enters the customer system, it'll just run havoc, right? And these are systems that are running Windows XP, Service Pack 3, right? And they're not going away. I had one system I had one system the other day, they asked me, how do you secure it? And it was running DOS. And I said, buy a new one. So I have scale, right? I have scale issues. The other big problem I have is requirements, right? So 3 different AV tools before giving a customer a file. That's an internal requirement. We must scan using 3 different AV tools before we're allowed to give it to a customer or produce a product or anything like that. Customer requirements, use this product engine, but not that product engine. Again, regulatory reasons, international export reasons, why I can't use certain products versus others. And I have to deliver products and services on time with no known malware around the world. So, I can't just choose one engine. Even if I could, I'd have internal requirements to scan with multiple because, I'm sure Pete could tell you, like, studies show one engine is not very effective, right? Like, you have to use multiple to even begin to have some risk coverage. I have to do this in a cost-effective manner across the world. Right? So I can't just buy 5 different tools and deploy them to every service department I have, right? Like you guys saw how many customer locations and stuff I have. Think about the network bandwidth of uploading files to that many, right? Like it just becomes exponentially harder to maintain all sorts of tools. And, on that last, I have a requirement to prove things to my customers. I have to prove that the files we scanned them. And I have to prove it wasn't the source of the infection, right? Like, so when a customer calls me up and says, hey, my control system's infected, like my first answer is like, okay, is anything terrible happening and can we help you fix it? But the second answer then becomes like, where did it come from? And we start beginning the investigation. So I have to have evidence that I have scanned everything that goes into a customer system, whether it be my product or something a service engineer brought in to patch and stuff. So how do I solve my problems, right? And it really comes down to a multi-engine AV. You see a product name up here, but there are others in this space, but this is the one we happen to use in our environment. Because it gives us the ability to, run on-premise in our own infrastructure on a single server and to support the entire company. Like it literally, we have one server running one product to support our entire company, both from, as we'll show you in the next slide, all the way from coding. So it's built into our CI/CD pipelines for our developers. It's built into our build. So as they build, it scans everything as it's been built. It even scans like whole VMDK images and stuff like that. We release the artifacts. Then as we go to deploy them, so as my system integrator teams, project teams, as they build, they are using this to scan. We are using this to prove out that we don't have viruses in our systems as we ship them from factory acceptance testing and during site acceptance testing and then operating, right? So we even use them as like our service engineers go out. So they're able to use the web API to upload the files they're about to take to the site and scan them across this before they go and take it to the customer. So, and because of this, my annual support cost, not my licensing cost, but just my internal annual support cost is less than $2,000 a year because I need one person who works, a little bit of time to make sure that things are updated and the servers are patched and stuff like that, and to chase down the occasional to help chase down the occasional false positive. But like that's my entire support costs for a product that literally scans every product that goes out of Hitachi Energy across the world and is used by all the service personnel around the world to scan files. So it's very, very cost effective for me to combine all those engines into one spot, right? Like I get one vendor. Onboarding a vendor, costs me millions of dollars and lots of gray hairs. And so, the fewer I have to do that, the much better, much better. So. The way this works is we have one server that, that has a core license for a certain number of engines. My product teams are nightly calling this in their CI/CD pipelines, and they're scanning all their products. And then as they build it, they also run it again. This allows contact. The other thing this kind of does, and what's nice, is it allows us to also make sure our files aren't false positives. right? As we build products, we want to make sure that the code we're writing some low-level code, and we're doing things that like the normal developer and stuff doesn't do. And so there's always the risk that we're gonna write something in our code base that's gonna cause a detection, right? And you say, big deal, like what does that really do? Well, sometimes we're releasing emergency build files on low-level source code and stuff like that. And that's part of a project delivery that has liquidated damages, which means actual cash of $1 million a day if we don't deliver that project on time. Just the other night, I had a phone call from the managing director asking me to, clear on an emergency basis one of our files because we had a project that was just about to go beyond our contractual obligations, and it had a major bug fix in it that they had to get out, and we had to release it, and we had to put it into the customer system, right? And if we didn't, we were going to enter into the liquidated damages area, and it was going to cost us a lot of money, right? The nice thing is I know one of the controls I don't have to worry about is, are we going to introduce malware during that emergency release session, right? The other nice thing is I also know we're not going to trip their engine, because chances are we're scanning with a very similar engine to the one they're using to detect our files as we bring it into the control system. Because if they detect even a false positive, I guarantee you the one thing we're not doing is we're not putting that file in the system that day, right? And because it's me and my software that caused that false detection, I don't get any contractual relief, right? They're going to charge me until we get it installed, and I can prove. The other thing is my proof of evidence, right? The amount of evidence I have to show to bring that file in now has just gone up exponentially, right? I have to really prove to the customer that it does not contain a virus or any form of malware, right? Instead of just running the engine and having it come out clean, we're going to have to probably do code reviews or show them the evidence of the code reviews and show them the actual functions that happen. So that gets real expensive and real time consuming very quickly. So. So benefit summary, right? I have one vendor, one solution, one server, and 0.01 of an FTE to support this on a global basis. I have global coverage, any employee from any of the 8 different regions to scan a project, or file, and get timely. That's the other big thing is they timely results. It doesn't help if you scan something, if it takes 36 hours to scan, that's not very useful when you're a service engineer about to go do something, an emergency deployment of a file. And peace of mind, I can sleep better knowing my company and customers are better protected from supply chain risk, right? Because at the end of the day, that's who I am, right? I'm the supplier. And when you talk about supply chain risk, this is what you don't want me to do, right? So this is how we integrate this into our system, and we use it at all phases, from build to deploy to service, so that we aren't that next infection. And then the next steps, we're just working on, growing this and leveraging this in even more areas. Right now, our customers, we talked about OEM and certifying vendors and stuff like that, right? This is one way I can certify more vendors on the antivirus space with only having to work with one vendor as we build those scanners into our system. The other thing is leverage kiosk for my service engineers. There are areas in the world where even the web one is not very accessible, right? Or the time takes too much effort. So them be able to have a rugged appliance that they can, literally throw in their backpack as they go into the depths of the jungles in Africa or South America to go service a station, knowing that they still have the ability to scan malware is fantastic for me. And then we're also looking at leveraging on the cloud side as we grow our digital service businesses, because as much as I want to protect myself from you guys from myself, the other thing I have to worry about is now that you guys are sending us lots of data and lots of files into our digital business systems, I have to also make sure that we're protected and our other customers are protected from you guys uploading files that will then infect us. So. And that's my presentation.